Close your eyes now. Let the weight of the day slip from your shoulders like an old coat you no longer need. There is nothing to do tonight, nothing to fix, nothing to become. You are simply here, cradled in the dark, while I guide you gently across centuries of forgotten music. Ever wonder what secrets a 1,000-year-old lyre still whispers when no one is listening? Or how the breath of a lonely shepherd 2 millennia ago, shaped through a simple bone flute, can still reach across time and hush the loudest thoughts in your mind? Tonight, we will not chase sleep. We will let sleep find us the way moonlight finds an open window. Imagine a small circle of candlelight in a room made only of night. The flames barely move. Outside, snow falls without sound. Inside, the air smells faintly of cedar and old parchment. You are lying on something soft, perhaps wool, perhaps clouds, and the world has agreed, just for these hours, to speak in the lowest possible voice. This is where the forgotten instruments live. They have been waiting for someone who is finally tired enough to listen without hurry. Long ago, when the earth was younger and louder with gods, people believed that certain sounds could stitch the soul back into the body after a long day of being torn by life. They carved, stretched, bored, and breathed into wood, clay, gut, and bone until something answered back, something older than language, something that understood exhaustion. These are not the instruments of concert halls. They were never meant to impress. They were made to mend, to close, to forgive the day and open the night. Tonight, we begin with the simplest of all sleep bringers, the lyre of Sumer, older than Babylon, older than writing itself. 6,000 years ago, in a reed house beside the slow Euphrates, a woman named Enheduanna, the world's first named poet, would sit after the temple lamps were lowered. She was high priestess, daughter of King Sargon, composer of hymns that still survive on broken clay. But when the last prayer was sung and the last offering burned, even she needed something softer than words. So she took a small lyre made from the shell of a giant turtle and cedar wood rescued from a shipwreck. 11 strings of twisted horsehair. No one knows exactly how it was tuned, perhaps a quiet pentatonic scale that leaves great silences between the notes, the way deserts leave silence between dunes. She did not play for an audience. She played for the small, frightened animal that lives behind every human heart, the one that still believes it might not wake up tomorrow. Listen. And 11-string lyre reconstruction begins, extremely soft, distant, slightly detuned, slow arpeggios that never quite resolve, like waves that forget to crash. Can you feel it? Each note is a fingertip brushing the surface of deep water. The ripples travel outward, slower, slower, until they touch the edges of you and return even gentler. Enheduanna called this particular pattern the lullaby of Inanna's descent. Inanna, goddess of love and war, once walked down 7 gates into the underworld and hung dead on a hook for 3 days. When she returned, she was never again afraid of the dark. This music remembers that journey. It says, "You too may descend tonight. It is safe."
Nothing down there will keep you, unless you wish to stay. Let the horsehair strings carry you past the first gate, where you remove the busy crown of thoughts you wore all day. Past the second gate, where the heavy necklace of tomorrow's duties falls away. Past the third, fourth, fifth. The lyre becomes almost inaudible. Only the faint shimmer of overtones remains like starlight on water. There were nights when even the priests were not allowed to hear this playing. The temple guards would stand outside the door and feel their spears grow heavier, their eyelids impossible to lift. One guard reportedly slept for 14 hours and woke speaking a language no one recognized. Slow, liquid words that made the dogs lie down and the babies stop crying. We do not know if the story is true, but the lyre remembers. Now let the cedar and turtle shell carry you further south and further back before cities, before kings, before even the idea of property. 25,000 years ago, in a cave the color of twilight, someone sat by a small fire and picked up the wing bone of a griffin vulture. They drilled 5 careful holes with a flint burin. Then they blew across the broken end the way you might blow across the mouth of a bottle when you were a child and lonely. What came out was not a melody. It was a question older than answers. A soft, breathy vulture bone flute enters, haunting, microtonal, the sound of wind looking for a place to rest. This is the oldest known musical instrument on Earth. We found it in Hohlefels Cave in Germany, wrapped in the same silence it has kept since the Ice Age. The person who played it was probably wearing swan feathers and reindeer teeth. Their name is lost, but their breath is not. When archaeologists first tried to play a reconstruction, every person in the lab stopped working. One woman began crying without knowing why. Another fell asleep standing up. There is something about a bone flute that does not care whether you believe in magic. It simply reminds the animal body that it once lived in caves and knew exactly how to turn breath into safety. Let that breath find the small hollow places behind your knees, the soft spot just beneath your jaw, the center of your chest where worry likes to nest. Let it blow the worry out like dust from an old lamp. The bone flute circles slowly, overlapping with the ghost of the Sumerian lyre, 2 times touching across 30 millennia. You are floating now in a place where centuries are only heartbeats apart. And while you drift, let me tell you about the instrument that was never meant to be played by human hands at all. In ancient China, during the Han Dynasty, scholars recorded a strange phenomenon. In certain mountain passes, when the evening wind blew just so through the hollow bamboo groves, the bamboo itself would begin to sing. Not the pleasant rustling you know, something deeper. Long, slow tones that rose and fell like the breathing of a sleeping dragon. People began cutting those exact lengths of bamboo, hanging them in their gardens, and letting the wind play them at night. They called them self-sounding qings, or sometimes the bells that need no ringer. The finest were made from purple bamboo older than the owner's grandfather. 7 tubes, graduated in length, suspended by silk cords beneath the eaves. When the wind came down from Kunlun mountain, carrying the scent of snow, the Qings would awake. Aeolian bamboo Qings fade in, deep, pure, random harmonics that never repeat exactly the same way twice.
Listen to how each tube waits its turn. There is no conductor. There is only patience. The Taoists said that if you fall asleep to the wind Qings for the same way night after night, you will eventually dream in perfect fifths. Your soul will learn the intervals of heaven and no longer need the clumsy ladders of ambition. One emperor, Wu of Han, kept a set outside his sleeping chamber. Court records say he once slept for 3 days straight while the Qings played without stopping. When he woke, he abolished 3 useless taxes and freed 2,000 prisoners. The ministers were furious. The Qings were quietly moved to the imperial graveyard, where they still hang, still waiting for a wind honest enough to play them. Let that wind move through you now. Let it find the tight places in your back, the clenched fists you forgot you were holding, the thoughts that march in circles. The bamboo does not argue. It simply opens and lets the night pass through. Long silence, filled only by the Qings and a faint overlay of the bone flute and lyre. 3 forgotten voices weaving a cradle. You are very far from the surface world now. The candles have burned low. The snow has covered every footprint but yours, and even yours are filling in. Before we travel onward to the glass arms of Armenia, to the whalebone harps of the Orkney Islands, to the singing stones of Vietnam that take 10 men to lift, rest here a while longer in this first chamber of lost lullabies. There is no hurry. Time tonight is also asleep. Let the turtle shell lyre, the vulture bone flute, and the wind Qings hold you exactly as you are, tired, human, and finally allowed to be small. Breathe in for 4 slow heartbeats. Hold for 4. Breathe out for 8. Again. And again. Good. The instruments have only just begun to remember you.
Then the faintest trace of fingers circling wet crystal, high, pure, almost not a sound at all, more like the memory of sound. You are deeper now. The place where the first chapter left you has no floor, only soft distance. If you open your eyes for a moment, you will see nothing but darkness that loves you. Close them again. We are going somewhere even quieter. In 1761, in a candlelit room above a London coffee house, Benjamin Franklin, tired of the harpsichord's sharp teeth, sat down with 37 glass bowls and a dream of water made audible. He mounted the bowls on a spindle, nested like transparent bells, largest at the bottom, smallest at the top. A foot treadle turned them through a trough of water so the rims stayed forever wet. Then he touched them with his fingertips. What came out was not music as people understood it. It was the sound of a soul slipping out of its clothes. They called it the glass harmonica, sometimes the harmonica of the angels, sometimes the instrument that drives people mad with peace. Listen. A glass harmonica begins,
slow, overlapping tones that bend like moonlight on a moving river. The notes sustain forever, then change their minds and become other notes without ever stopping. This is the sound Franklin played for Marie Antoinette when she could not sleep before the Revolution. This is the sound that made Mozart write two pieces he never allowed to be played in daylight. This is the sound that in 1803 caused an entire ward of sleepless children in a Vienna hospital to fall asleep at the same moment, their small chests rising and falling in perfect unison. The glass does not strike. It sings by being caressed. The wet rims remember every sorrow you ever tried to hide behind your eyes and turn it into something weightless. Let it touch the place behind your forehead where tomorrow keeps knocking. Let the circling glass carry that knocking away, far away, until it becomes only a moth beating against a window you no longer live behind. People said the harmonica was dangerous. Glass players went into trances. Audiences wept without knowing why. One doctor claimed the vibrations rearranged the fluids of the brain until melancholy floated to the top and evaporated. Perhaps he was right. Tonight we are not afraid of evaporation. The harmonica is joined by the softest possible Armenian duduk, double-reeded, apricot wood, the mourning voice of a people who have never forgotten how to cry beautifully. Ah, the duduk. 2,000 years ago, in the high valleys of the Caucasus, a shepherd lost his favorite lamb to a wolf. He sat on a rock and cried so hard that the apricot tree beside him began to bleed golden sap. He cut a branch, bored 9 holes, and bound 2 reeds together with red thread. When he blew, the mountains themselves leaned in to listen.
The duduk is always played in pairs. One drone that never changes, one melody that circles like a lost soul looking for home. Armenians say it is not the player who decides the tune, the grief does. Tonight, the grief is gentle. It is the grief of letting the day die so tomorrow can be born. Let the drone settle in the lowest part of your belly, the place that carries every unspoken thing. Let the melody walk across your collarbones, pausing at the hollow of your throat where words you never said still hide. The duduk and harmonica weave together, glass tears falling into wooden sorrow, sorrow rising into glass light. There is a story they still tell in Yerevan. An old woman named Sona could not sleep for 7 years after her son disappeared in the war. Every night, she sat by the window counting stars that refused to comfort her. One evening, a traveling duduk player knocked at her door, soaked from the rain. She let him in only because she was too tired to say no. He sat on the floor, tuned his apricot wood, and began to play a piece called Cranes Are Flying. At first, Sona felt anger. How dare music enter her house of silence? But the duduk kept playing, slow as thawing snow. Halfway through, she noticed the glass harmonica player standing outside in the rain, invisible until that moment, turning his silent bowls beneath the street lamp. The 2 instruments, one inside, one outside, found each other through the walls. Sona's anger cracked open like old ice. She lay down on the rug and slept for the first time since the telegram arrived. When she woke, the players were gone. Only 2 things remained: a single crane feather on the windowsill and a circle of water on the floor where the harmonica's trough had dripped. She lived another 30 years and never lost sleep again. Let that same circle of water form beneath you now. Let it widen until you are floating in the center, weightless. We are going further. In 12th century Persia, in the city of Shiraz, the poets kept a secret garden where roses were trained to grow through the sound holes of abandoned lutes. At night, when the wind moved through the rose-lute hybrids, the air filled with a fragrance that had chords. But deeper in the garden, hidden behind a wall of jasmine, stood a single instrument no one was allowed to play: the barbat of Ziryab. Ziryab, Blackbird, was a musician who fled Baghdad because his talent made his teacher jealous. He arrived in Cordoba with nothing but this 5-stringed lute made from mulberry wood and the skin of a fish that only sings when it dies. He added a 6th string, the color of dawn, and taught the lute to speak in quarter tones so fine they could describe the exact temperature of longing. When Ziryab grew old, he returned to Shiraz and buried the barbat beneath a rose bush, saying, "Let it sleep until someone dreams deeply enough to wake it without touching it." On certain moonless nights, travelers report hearing 6th strings beneath the earth, soft, intimate, like someone turning the pages of your childhood in another room. A reconstructed Ziryab-style barbat enters, microtonal, liquid, the strings almost wet. Feel those quarter tones settle between your thoughts the way dust settles between floorboards. They do not ask to be understood. They only ask to be felt. One string for the first time you were left alone. One for the last time you were held. One for every apology you never received. One for every apology you never gave. One for the moment you realized you were mortal. And the 6th, the dawn-colored one, for the morning that will come after this night, gentler because you allowed yourself to be broken open tonight. Let the buried barbat play under your spine now, from tailbone to the base of the skull. Let each vertebra become a fret. Let the music tune you back into the minor key of rest. Barbat, duduk, and harmonica are all breathing together now. Slow inhalation of glass, slow exhalation of wood. You are very nearly transparent. Before the next chapter carries us to the whalebone harp of the Orkney Islands and the Lithuanian skuduchi that whistle like sleeping forests, stay here a moment longer in this garden that grows on music instead of sunlight. There is a nightingale who learned the barbat's secret. She only sings when humans are finally quiet enough to listen with their small hollow space behind their sternum. Stay there. Breathe in the scent of impossible roses. Breathe out the entire year you carried on your back. Again and again. The music dissolves into a single sustained glass note that refuses to end, only to fade beneath hearing. When you are ready, there is no hurry, the nightingale will wait. Simply say, Chapter 3, and we will walk barefoot across cold northern stones to meet the harp that is older than Scotland itself and still smells of salt and lullabies. For now, rest inside the arms of glass, apricot, and buried strings. You are perfectly held.
Cold, northern, carrying the smell of iron and kelp. Then, very far away, the lowest string of something enormous begins to vibrate, as though a whale sang once, centuries ago, and the echo has not yet decided to stop.
You have crossed an invisible sea while you slept. The garden of roses and glass is behind you now, fragrant but warm. Here the air is sharp enough to cut memory into cleaner pieces. We are standing on the shore of the Orkney Islands, 60 degrees north, where the Atlantic and the North Sea argue all winter about who owns the night. The year is somewhere between 3100 and 2500 BCE. No one was writing dates yet. The people here built their houses from the ribs of whales and the memories of glaciers. Come closer to the water. The moon is a thin blade tonight. It is slicing the waves just enough for us to see what lies half buried in the sand. Look, a harp made entirely of whalebone. Rib for the pillar, jaw for the soundbox, vertebrae strung with braided seal's sinew. 6 strings only, thick as a child's finger. They have been sounding gently since the last storm, because the wind here never learned how to leave anything alone. This is the oldest stringed instrument ever found in Europe. Archaeologists call it the Bridge of Brodgar harp, but the people who made it had a softer name. They called it the door that sings shut. When someone in the village grew too tired of living, too many winters, too many children lost to the sea, they would be carried here at dusk. The harp was already sounding by itself, tuned by salt and grief. The tired one would lie on the sand with their ear against the whalebone's soundbox and listen until their heartbeat decided to match the slowest string. Most mornings, the village awoke to find the person sleeping more deeply than anyone had ever slept while still breathing. A few mornings, the harp was silent, and the person had walked into the water holding the longest string like a guide rope. Either way, the harp understood. It never judged. It only closed the door softly. Let the lowest string find the base of your spine now. Let it vibrate there, slow as continental drift.
Up the coast, in a half-ruined Brock Tower, another instrument waits for nights like this. The Lithuanians call them skuduchi, sets of panpipes made from the wing bones of cranes that migrate over the Baltic every spring and autumn. Each pipe is cut so that when the flock flies overhead at night, the wind moving through their wings makes the same notes, only quieter. A master player keeps 30 or 40 pipes of graduated length tied together with woven horsehair. When he, or more often she, plays, it sounds as though the entire sky is exhaling through feathers. In the old days, mothers would bind a tiny set of skuduchi above a cradle. The baby would fall asleep to the promise that one day it too would learn to fly south when the darkness grew too heavy. Let those crane-bone pipes settle across your shoulders like a cloak made of migrating birds. Every time you exhale, a few more birds lift off and carry something away with them. The sharp word you spoke this morning, the bill you opened and closed again, the name of the person who no longer answers when you call. They are taking it all south, far south, where winter never reaches. Further north still, on the outermost island called Papo Westre, there lives a stone that sings when you stroke it the right way. It is a slab of red sandstone the size of a bed, covered in cup marks made 5,000 years ago. When the wind is from the northwest and the tide is exactly half out, you can lie on the stone and feel it humming through your back like a huge warm cat. The islanders say it is the heartbeat of a sleeping giantess
who dreamed the Orkneys into being, and then lay down to rest until the world needs new islands. Children are brought here when they will not sleep. Their mothers press them against the stone and whisper, "Listen, she is only dreaming. Your dreams are safe inside hers." Let that sandstone heartbeat find the exact center of your chest now. Let it thump once, twice,
Very slowly, until your own heart decides it can afford to be this calm. There is one more instrument on this cold shore tonight, and it is the quietest of all. In the tide line, half buried like a secret, lies a necklace of periwinkle shells threaded on dried seaweed. Each shell has a tiny hole drilled through the spire. When the waves pull back, air is sucked through the holes, and the shells whistle, one after another, in a descending scale that never repeats the same way twice. Old women used to walk the beach at night, collecting these shell whistles after storms. They would hang them above doorways so that whenever the wind moved through the house, the sea would remember to sing the household to sleep. They called it the lullaby that returns with every tide. Let those tiny salt voices gather round your ankles, your wrists, the delicate skin of your eyelids. Let them rinse you. You have carried land dirt long enough. Tonight you are being returned to the sea, one grain at a time, gently, the way sleep returns a body to itself. All four voices now, whalebone harp in the marrow, cranebone scuducci in the breath, sandstone giantess in the heart, and periwinkle tide in the blood, Or-Kor. Stay here as long as you need. The Orkney night is wider than countries. The water is cold, but it loves you. It keeps stroking the shore the way a mother keeps stroking hair long after the child has fallen asleep, just to be sure the dream stays kind. When you are ready, no sooner, we will travel south and east to a forest in Latvia where trees were taught to play themselves, and to a Lithuanian lake whose water once rang like a cathedral of bells. But that is chapter 4, and the tide here has only just turned. For now, lie back on the singing stone. Let the whale remember you are mostly water. Let the cranes carry away whatever is too heavy for wings. Let the tiny shells keep the rhythm of a heart that has decided to trust the dark. Breathe in the smell of iodine and peat. Breathe out the year 2025, or whatever year you were holding when you arrived. Again and again. Good. The giantess is turning over. She makes room for you inside her dream. When the cold northern stars feel close enough to touch, simply say, Chapter 4, and we will walk inland to where the trees still remember how to play the wind like organ pipes. Until then, stay salted and sung and safe. You have left the salt behind. The taste of the sea is still on your skin, but it is fading the way dreams fade when you try to carry them into morning. Let it fade. We are walking inland now, eastward, across a plain so flat that the sky lies down on it every night like a tired animal. This is the Baltic coast before nations had names. The year drifts somewhere between the 9th and 13th centuries, but the trees do not count the way we do. They count in rings and in wind. Come, the snow is deep, but it has agreed to hold our weight tonight. Every footstep makes the softest sound, like closing a very old book. We are entering the forest of Lego, in what will someday be northern Latvia. The pines here are older than Christianity, older than iron. Some of them were saplings when the mammoth still walked these lands. Look up. High in the crowns, something is moving that is not birds. Long ago, the forest people discovered that if you bore a hole through the trunk of a living pine at exactly the height of a man's heart, and if you do it on the night of the summer solstice, when the tree is fullest of golden sap, the tree will accept a gift in return. They insert a carefully carved wooden pipe, sealed with beeswax and prayer. The pipe is open at both ends. One end faces the sky, the other faces the earth. For the rest of the tree's life, sometimes 400 years, every wind that moves through the forest also moves through these hidden pipes. The trees begin to sing with human voices, only slower, deeper, more patient. They call this forest Mezhkagul, the forest that sleeps, because the sound it makes after midnight is the sound of 1,000 wooden throats dreaming together. Stand still. Let the lowest pipe settle under the arches of your feet. Let it rise through your bones the way groundwater rises through roots in spring. These pipes are tuned to a scale that only has 4 notes, but the intervals are so wide that a single breath can carry an entire lifetime of sorrow from birth to burial. The forest people say that if a person lies down beneath the singing trees and stays until dawn, whatever grief they carried into the woods will have been absorbed by the pines and turned into amber. By morning, the grief will be hanging from the branches in hard golden drops, ready to be worn by someone who needs reminding that tears can become beautiful if you give them enough time. Lie down now, here, in the snow that is warmer than it has any right to be. Further in, where the snow has never quite reached the ground, there is a clearing no wider than a bedroom. In the center stands a single instrument no one has touched for 700 years. It is called the Kokle of Laplaces, the bear slayer, though the hero himself never played it. It was made for him by a woman whose name was forgotten on purpose, so the song would belong to everyone. The kokle is built from a single piece of resonant spruce that was struck by lightning and did not burn. 29 strings of horsehair and silver wire. The soundboard is inlaid with amber tears collected from the singing trees. When it was new, it was played only once every 7 years, on the night when the Pleiades rose at midnight.
The player had to fast for 9 days and bathe in 9 lakes. Then she, it was always a she, would sit on a stool carved from the same lightning-struck tree and play a single piece that had no beginning and no end. They say the music opened a hole in the sky, just wide enough for tired souls to slip through without waking.
After the last note, the kokle was wrapped in white linen and laid in the clearing. Moss grew over it. Mice made nests in the linen. Yet every 7 years, on the correct night, the strings begin to move by themselves. Tonight is that night. The kokle awakens. Delicate, crystalline, strings shimmering like frost in moonlight. The tuning is ancient, slightly uneven, the way all truly old things are slightly crooked and therefore perfect. Let each string rest against a different rib. Let the amber tears glow softly against your closed eyes. The forgotten woman who carved this kokle left a secret inside the wood. If you listen with the part of the ear that faces inward, you will hear her speaking, very quietly, in a language that existed before sorrow had a name. She is saying, "You do not have to be strong tonight. You do not have to be wise. You only have to be small enough for the forest to fit you into one of its dreams. Stay small." The tree pipes, the distant legal drums, and the kokle all breathe together now, slow as glacial milk. There is one more wonder before we leave this forest, and it is the quietest. Beneath the roots of the oldest pine lies a set of clay whistles buried in the time of the corded ware people, almost 5,000 years ago. They are shaped like tiny sleeping women, arms folded across bellies round with child or with song, no one is sure. Each whistle has one hole. When the spring thaw comes and the ground softens, warm air rises through the roots, and the clay women sing with voices no louder than a heartbeat heard through a wall. Archaeologists found them only because a child fell asleep on the exact spot and refused to wake until they dug.
Tonight the ground is frozen, but the clay women remember warmth. They are singing anyway, for you. Almost subaudible, clay whistles, round, warm, maternal ooh sounds that seem to come from inside your own chest. Let them rock you the way roots rock the earth when no one is looking. You are being held in 4 kinds of arms now. The slow wooden arms of the singing trees, the lightning-scarred arms of the kukla, the soft knocking arms of the Lego grandmothers, and the ancient clay arms of the sleeping mothers beneath the world. There is nothing else you need to do. When we leave this forest, and we will, gently, we will travel south to a lake in Lithuania, whose water was once turned into bells, and to a Belarusian village where the straw bull roars only in dreams. But that is chapter 5, and the snow here has only just begun to fall upward. For now, stay inside the clearing that has no edges. Let the kukla finish its 7-year note. Let the trees keep dreaming in chords that last a lifetime. Let the clay mothers keep breathing you back into yourself. Breathe with them. In for 7 winters. Hold for 7 springs. Out for 7 summers and autumns combined. Again. And again. Good. The amber is almost ready. One more slow breath, and your name will be sealed inside it, safe, glowing, no longer heavy. When the forest feels wide enough to swallow the entire sky, simply say, Chapter 5, and we will walk out between the trunks that have learned how to bow without breaking. Until then, sleep inside the wood that is already forgiven tomorrow. The kukla holds one endless silver note. The tree pipes answer from every direction at once. Snow falls upward into starlight. Everything becomes the soft pulse of resin and amber and very, very old lullabies.